The Kawasaki Versys was introduced to the UK in November 2006. It's a 650 parallel twin with an upright seating position and a small screen. The engine is derived from the ER6, but the compression ratio has been reduced from 11.3 to 10.6 to boost low end power. The result is a gutsy and lively engine that pulls strongly from low revs but thrives on being worked hard in the upper rev range. This makes the Versys surprisingly quick on the open road and very tractable in the urban environment. I've owned the orange Versys you can see here for the last 3 years, and I thought it a good time to reflect on how it's performed. And by the way, the green bike belongs to my wife. So let's start with a bit of history. The first Versys in the UK was originally available in either silver or orange with the option of ABS braking. The orange bike here has got ABS as indicated by the sticker on the front fork leg. With long travel suspension and a seat height of 845mm compared to the 790 of the ER6, it was easy to lump it into that segment labelled dual sport, those bikes with ability both on and off road. But whilst it might appeal to many of the riders who choose V-Stroms and BMW GS, its 17-inch front wheel will always limit its off-road performance relative to the 19-inch wheel competitors. On the road, however, the Versys has lively handling and feels better planted than most of its competitors. This makes it ideal for the UK market, where dirt roads are few and far between. But on roads like these, the Versys is really at home. So let's talk about the look. It's got some good angles. It looks lean, I think, from this angle. And here, loaded up for a tour, it's at home in any company. But front on, that headlamp does raise a few eyebrows. I personally like the looks, but whether you do or you don't, this is a purposeful and comfortable motorcycle. The bike here is fitted with a rack to take luggage. The colour-coded Gibby luggage is a very popular option, turning the Versys into an excellent touring machine and changing the whole look of the bike. The panniers are big enough to take a full-size helmet and clip off very easily to take into your overnight accommodation as luggage. So today, late 2011, nearly 5 years after its introduction, the Versys has earned a strong position in the adventure segment in the UK as the best-selling 650, beating the diehards from BMW and Suzuki. So let's look at the bike in more detail, its good and bad points, and see how this ugly duckling got to be so popular. So throw your leg over the Versys, and the first thing you'll notice is that this is quite a tall bike. But it's easily lowered with a Speedy Gonzales lowering kit. It's simply a machined aluminium block that fits at the bottom of the suspension unit. Easy enough to fit yourself in an hour or so. Once you're sitting comfortably, the instruments become very easy to read. There's a trip computer which will show miles per gallon, etc., and there's a fuel gauge. A word of warning though, the buttons that control the computer are prone to playing up. On this bike, there's a mounting point and a power supply for my sat-nav. Here on the green bike, you can see a control unit for Oxford heated grips. Okay, now we know where everything is, let's go for a ride. The first thing you'll notice, if you're a lighter rider, the suspension feels a little bit harsh. Now I'm quite heavy and it feels good for me, but here we can see my son riding the Versys, and for him it all feels a bit stiff. There is an upside to this though. The Versys isn't easily unbalanced when it carries a pillion passenger or a load of luggage. And what the Versys lacks in suppleness on the ride, it more than makes up for with its fantastic handling. This is no sports bike, but at road legal, real world speeds it can be more fun than one. It really comes into its own on the tighter twisties, where it seems much easier to be in the right gear than it does on a bigger bike. So performance is lively and handling's excellent. Brakes on the other hand are average. They do their job, they pull you up, but they're not as responsive as some bikes on the market. One of the really good points about the Versys is tank range. You're going to get 55 to 60 miles per gallon out of the Versys, however you ride it. And with a 19 litre tank, that means you're going to get about 200 miles between fill-ups. So you're not looking for a petrol station every 100 miles. And with that give your luggage, it makes it ideal for those weekends away. Okay, so let's come on to known faults and problems. Well, in truth, there are very few. Reliability is excellent. The engines are bulletproof. The sort of niggles that bikes are prone to are as follows. It's not unusual to get a slight buzzing from the front of the fairing here, but you can fix it easily with a bit of foam rubber. I've mentioned the known issue with the control buttons on the computer and that the suspension is slightly harsh. Front and back there is some adjustment for rebound and preload. Stress fractures with the exhaust downpipes going to the silencer box are very common. Mine went at 15,000 miles, but it was fixed in half an hour and for £20 by a welder. A few people have reported problems with rectifiers. This is usually due to corrosion of the electrical contacts. If you use your bike in all weather, it's best to protect the rectifier from road spray by fitting a hugger, and at the front end, a fender extender helps protect the radiator in front of the engine. One niggle is there's no centre stand, so you have to be ingenious to do some jobs. My advice is visit a good forum like versys.co.uk, where you'll find most of the talk is about riding and enjoying the Versys and not about it breaking down. So let's move on to cost of ownership. I've mentioned fuel economy, 55 to 60 is normal, some people do better than that. Servicing is reasonably priced at my local Kawasaki dealer. But this is an uncomplicated bike and a lot of people choose to service themselves. Tyres and brake pads last reasonably well, about 6,000 miles my average for a rear tyre, and at 17,000 miles I'm still on the original chain and sprockets. My orange Versys has been used through 2 bad winters on salty roads as regular daily transport, and so far suffering very little rust or corrosion. So let me sum the Versys up in a few sentences. The first and most important point to make is how much fun this bike is with sharp handling and an eager engine. The second point is that they're solidly built and hardly ever go wrong. And finally, that this is a very practical bike as a commuter or with the extra luggage as a great touring bike. But in the end, don't buy a Versys because it's practical, buy it because it's fun.